At first, it was just a glimmer. He was laying on his side, delirious, frozen, and slowly he began to recognize who he was talking to. And then he realized, oh my gosh, I need to get up. Hey, I'm Jared, Uncle Jared with all his light. And in 1996, Beck Weathers and a couple of expeditions were up on Mt Everest, and things went very, very wrong. Now, Beck Weathers was not an experienced mountaineer or climber, but he had a few summits under his belt, and he thought, hey, I'm going to plop down the money, and I'm going to do this, because that's what I do, right? It's just like most of us who, once they set their mind to something, they're just going to do it. Consequences ignored. His family's like, come on, can't you spend more time with us, play with us more? And he's like, listen, after this one, I'll hang it up and I'll spend more time with you. So he gallivants off to Mount Everest, and he's with his crew, and they're climbing up, and they're on their summit day, and Beck has a problem with his eyes because of a previous eye surgery. His eye sockets are changing shape, and he goes blind. So he's waiting on the mountain in blindness, trying to figure out what to do. Finally, after a couple hours, someone is helping escort him down. But by this time, chaos is broken out, and it's piling on big time. A giant storm has rolled in, and that nice, sunny, calm weather that was there is now practically monsoon. This is May in the Himalayas. Just a bad time to be in a storm at, 28,000 feet. That's like airliner level. So he's stumbling down the mountain with his compatriots, and they trip and tangle and are rocked in this mini avalanche and get piled and buried and wrapped around and injured. And most everyone is getting critical level at this point. They're running out of energy, they're out of oxygen, and they're just trying to survive themselves. So they do their best to help Beck, but he is not responsive. He's sitting there, he's lost his gloves and his goggles, and everybody knows, oh, he's a dead man. So they do what is a controversial but maybe prudent thing, and they leave him there to die, so that they don't all die themselves. And they wander the plateau and get to their tents and jump in there, and they're like, I can't believe it, everybody's dying out there. So Beck, he was about to die. In fact, another climber walked by him and clunk, clunk, hey, is anyone home? No response. So they're like, oh man, this guy, no goggles, no gloves, in this storm, he's a dead man, and I can't carry him because I'm trying to get off myself. Well, in the middle of the night, Beck is there, frozen, slobber, frozen drool on his face, head probably frozen to the terrain on his side in the fetal position, all banged up, no gloves, no goggles, snowblind, and more. And he's laying there, willing himself to die. And he's about to die, completely delirious. And he sees something in his mind. He sees a glimmer. And he starts a conversation. And it slowly realizes, oh my gosh, I'm talking to my wife. I'm talking to my kids. And they want me. They're reaching out in my subconscious, in my mind, in my memory, to help me come home. They're begging me to come home. So Beck Weathers, this reckless, selfish person, pulls up on his elbow and then sits upright and then kneels down and stands up, doing his most unselfish act he's done in a long time. And he starts staggering 1 foot in front of the other through this howling storm, through these freezing temperatures to get to the group tent. And sometime early in the morning, he stumbles into camp, and no one can believe it. First, they literally think it's a ghost coming to haunt them. But it's him. It's Beck. Beck. Beck! Everyone, as much as they can, give him a hug. Get him in the tent. Start trying to warm him up. He's still high on the mountain. But they somehow manage to get this man a little bit of rest. And they know he's not going to make it unless some miraculous thing happens. So they get him down as low as they can. And they're able to communicate with their satellite radios. And some brave BA from the Pakistani Air Force or the Nepali Air Force decides, you know what? Today's not the day. Beck is going down. Tries to land his helicopter. Way too heavy. No one's ever landed a helicopter at this height, this altitude before. The blades are cutting through the air, but there's nothing to cut through. So it's unstable. And starts to lose his altitude. So he drops down to a lower elevation where he can safely land. Kicks out the co-pilot. Rips everything else out of the helicopter and gets just enough lift that he can land heroically. They shovel Beck into the back and he flies away like a proximity flight of a wingsuit, just scraping the landscape as he whoosh shoots out of the valley down into the flats and gets him to a hospital where they stabilize him enough that he can fly to the United States, to Texas, where he's ironically a doctor himself, a pathologist. But this is just the beginning of Beck's troubles after this heroic multinational rescue. He now comes home a broken man to his broken relationships. He loses his fingers and his hands. He loses his nose. He becomes so ugly from the damage that Mount Everest took his fingers and took his nose and took his pride. When he got back, he realized it's a crumpled shell. You know what? This is not all about me. My life doesn't need to be all about me. He looks around and reaches back in his memory of when his children were, Dad, come home, get up, you can do it. Come be with us. Same with his wife, Peach. What a great name, right? Peach. So Peach and her kids are reaching out to Beck, and Beck lands in his property in Texas, looks around at his life and assesses himself. He's like, oh man, I've got a long way to go, and I'm so grateful that I have these people that sort of still love me. So the next years, he works on his relationships, and he says to himself and in public, he says, that disaster on Everest, that is the greatest thing that's happened to me in the last 20 years since his marriage and since he had his children. He says that's the greatest thing that's happened to him because he was able to live through it, reassess everything, and realize that his relationships were more important than his pride. So remember that next time you're about to shoot off on your own, for your own self-aggrandizement. I'm Jared with All Is Light.